The house lights dimmed, and a hush swept over the audience. From my office upstairs, I watched through the glass panel as 1,000 faces turned toward the stage. My stage. My theater. The gold-trimmed velvet curtains swayed softly, catching the glow from the chandeliers like they were soaking in the moment with me. I leaned against my desk, smoothing the cuff of my silk blazer. The same deep emerald shade as the first dress I ever wore to an audition, the one where I was told, "Honey, you're just not meant for the stage." That voice had stayed with me for years. Tonight, it felt almost laughable. Almost. The hum of my phone on the desk snapped me back. I glanced down, and the name on the screen made my breath still. Margaret Hale. My old drama teacher. The one who looked me in the eye at 17 and said, "You don't have the presence for theater, Ava. Find something safer." The text was short, almost awkward. "In town. Heard about your theater. Can I come by?" I set the phone down, my fingers lingering on the smooth wood of the desk. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the one that had learned to smile through clenched teeth, knew this moment was too perfect to pass up. Some stories, I thought, deserve to be told in the place they began, even if the ending turned out nothing like anyone expected. I was 17, the first time I set foot on a real stage. The Lincoln High Auditorium wasn't exactly Broadway, but to me, it might as well have been the Palace Theater. The scent of dust, old curtains, and too many years of hairspray hung in the air. My palms were damp as I clutched my audition script, the paper edges bending under my grip. They called my name, Ava Collins, and my legs carried me forward, even though my chest felt tight. The spotlight hit, hot and blinding, and for a few precious seconds, I forgot the nerves. I spoke the lines with everything I had, letting my voice rise and fall like I'd practiced in my bedroom 100 times. When it was over, there was silence. Not the good kind. From the judges' table, Margaret Hale leaned forward. "Ava," she said, her tone smooth, almost pitying. "You have a sweet quality, but theater demands presence. Command. You just don't have that." I nodded like I understood, but inside, her words slammed into me like a door shutting in my face. I walked off the stage, my knees wobbling, and by the time I reached the hallway, the tears had already blurred my vision. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the tiny silver charm bracelet my grandmother had given me. It had one charm, a little star. "For when you're ready to shine," she'd said. I turned it over in my hand, feeling the cool metal press into my skin, and wondered if she'd been wrong about me. But the next morning I decided something. If I couldn't stand on their stage, I'd find a way to build my own. Literally, if I had to. I started working weekends at a local coffee shop and taking night classes in stage management, lighting, and set design. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked. At school, I kept my head down while everyone else rehearsed for the spring musical. Margaret never mentioned my audition again. Still, every time I touched that silver star, I imagined a future where she'd walk into a theater, and it would be mine. That fantasy kept me moving forward, even when it felt impossible. The first theater I ever worked in wasn't glamorous. It was a crumbling little playhouse off Willow Street with folding chairs for seats and a leaky roof that dripped during summer storms. But to me, it was a kingdom. I started as a volunteer, sweeping floors, painting backdrops, and hauling props up rickety stairs. I learned every corner of that building. The hum of the old light board, the stubborn lock on the costume closet, the way the curtains needed to be coaxed into closing all the way. The manager, a wiry woman named Linda Price, noticed my work ethic. One night after a late rehearsal, she caught me resewing a torn costume hem. "You could have just stapled it," she said, leaning on the doorway. "I wanted it to look right," I replied. She smiled, the kind that meant something. "Kid, you've got an eye for this. Ever thought about running a place like this?" It sounded ridiculous then, but Linda became my first real mentor. She taught me budgets, booking, marketing, things I didn't know I needed to know. Under her wing, I started managing small productions, booking local acts, and even negotiating with touring companies. Money was tight. I worked mornings at a diner and nights at the theater. I skipped parties, skipped vacations. Sometimes I skipped dinner. But every time I locked up after a show and stood in the empty house, looking at the silent stage, I felt alive. My first big break came when a regional touring company lost their venue at the last minute. I convinced them to perform at our little playhouse. I stayed up 48 hours straight repainting sets, reprinting programs, and organizing seating. On opening night, the house was packed. The applause rattled the walls. That gig paid enough for me to enroll in a business program at a community college. From there, doors started opening. Internships at bigger theaters, invitations to industry conferences. I soaked it all in, asking questions, taking notes, building a network. Still, I kept my success quiet back home. I posted the occasional photo, maybe a blurry backstage shot or a smiling cast selfie, but never mentioned my titles or paychecks. People from Lincoln High thought I was just dabbling in theater, still chasing an impossible dream. The truth was, I was laying bricks for something much bigger. By 25, I'd managed 3 different theaters and negotiated contracts worth more than I'd ever imagined. By 28, I'd saved enough and convinced the right investors to buy my own venue. Not just any venue. A historic 800-seat theater in the heart of downtown Raleigh. The day the deed was signed, I slipped my grandmother's silver star charm onto my wrist. I stood on the stage, looking out at the empty seats, and whispered to myself, "This is mine." No one from my past knew. Not yet. I wasn't ready to tell them. Not until I could look them in the eye and see their disbelief melt into something else entirely. That moment was coming. The day Margaret Hale walked into my theater, the winter air outside still clung to her coat. She stepped into the lobby, blinking at the golden light spilling from the chandeliers, her heels clicking against a polished marble floor. I stayed near the ticket counter for a moment, watching her take it all in. Her eyes traveled upward, to the sweeping staircase, the velvet-lined balcony, the framed posters of past productions. My name was on every single one. She didn't notice me right away. She was too busy staring at the plaque mounted beside the main doors. The Collins Theater, established 2021. When her gaze landed on it, I saw her brows knit together, as if she was trying to make sense of it. "Ava," she finally said, turning toward me. I smiled, stepping forward. "Hi, Margaret. Welcome." Her eyes scanned me quickly, the tailored black dress, the silver star charm on my wrist, the calm that came from owning every square foot around us. I heard you were involved in theater," she said. "But this," her voice trailed off. "This is mine," I said simply. She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Yours? As in I own it. Every brick, every seat, every light." Margaret's lips parted, but no words came. She turned slowly, her gaze sweeping the lobby again, as if the walls themselves might correct me. I gestured toward the grand double doors leading to the house. "Come on, let me show you." Inside, the theater was bathed in a soft golden glow, the stage set for that night's performance. Plush crimson seats stretched out in neat rows, the air carrying that distinct mix of fresh paint, polished wood, and the faintest hint of dust from history. Margaret walked down the aisle with me, her eyes catching on the carved detailing of the balcony rail, the inlaid wood on the stage floor. "When I was 17, I said, keeping my voice light, you told me I didn't have presence, that I'd never be on stage." Her step faltered. "Ava, I stopped, turning to face her. "You were right. I'm not on the stage." I gestured to the empty rows, the towering curtains. "I'm running the whole show." She blinked, as if trying to fit this version of me into the one she remembered, the girl with trembling hands and a voice too soft for her liking. "This place, it's incredible," she admitted, her tone softer now. "Thank you," I said. "It's been a long time coming." The silence stretched between us. I could feel the weight of unspoken years, the rejections, the loneliness, the grit it took to stand here today. "I never imagined," she began, "that I'd amount to this." I finished for her, not unkindly. She met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw something there that wasn't judgment. It was respect, raw and unpolished, but real. From the lobby, the muffled sound of an audience arriving floated in. Laughter, footsteps, the buzz of anticipation. My stage manager poked his head in to signal we were 15 minutes from curtain. Margaret looked around one more time, her gaze lingering on the stage. "You must be proud," she said. "I am," I replied. "Not just of this place, but of the fact that I built it without asking permission from anyone who told me I couldn't." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, nodding slightly. As I led her back toward the lobby, I felt the shift. For years, she had been the gatekeeper who'd shut the door in my face. Now I was the one holding the keys. Margaret lingered in the lobby, her fingers grazing the edge of the ticket counter as if grounding herself. I could see the questions in her eyes, but I decided to give her the answer she didn't even know she was asking. "You know," I began, "I didn't invite you here just to show you the theater. I wanted you to understand something." She straightened, her coat collar brushing her chin. "All right. When you told me I didn't belong on stage, I believed you for a while. I let those words shape my choices. But somewhere along the line, I realized I didn't have to fit your version of success. I could build my own." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand. "Now, I'm in a position where I can open doors for people who've been shut out. I invest in young performers, stage crews, directors, people who are hungry but overlooked. And here's the condition, Margaret. If you want to be part of this theater's future, it can't be as the person who decides who is worthy and who isn't. It has to be as someone who lifts them up." Her shoulders tensed, but she nodded slowly. "I can do that." I studied her face. This wasn't about revenge. It was about setting a standard. "It's not enough to say you can. You'll need to prove it. Volunteer with our youth outreach program. Mentor without judgment. If you can commit to that for a year, I'll let you direct a show here. On my stage." Her eyes widened. "You trust me with that?" I smiled faintly. "Trust is earned. But I believe people can change if they want to." The door swung open behind us, and two more figures stepped in. Daniel King, an old classmate who used to call my theater dreams cute, and Serena Morris, the girl who landed every lead role I auditioned for. Both looked around the lobby in stunned silence. "Wow," Serena breathed. "Ava, this place is," she trailed off, clearly searching for the right word. "Mine," I said again, the word fitting sweeter each time. Daniel chuckled awkwardly. "Listen, I've been trying to get my improv group into a decent venue. Maybe." I cut in, my tone light but firm. "I support people who support others. Show me you're serious about the craft, not just the applause. Put in the work, take the small gigs, and maybe I'll give you a shot." They both nodded, a little humbled, and I realized something. This wasn't just my theater. It was a place where the rules had changed, where gatekeepers didn't get the final say. Margaret looked at me again, and this time, her gaze carried something almost like gratitude. "I'll take your challenge," she said quietly. "Good," I replied. "Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the best stages are built for everyone willing to step into the light, not just the chosen few." The box office phone rang, pulling me back into the flow of the evening. Another sold-out crowd was waiting, and I was the one who decided when the curtain would rise. 2 weeks later, I stood backstage as our youth theater group rehearsed for their debut. The air was alive with nervous laughter, the shuffle of costumes, and the smell of fresh paint on the set pieces. Margaret was there too, crouched beside a shy 12-year-old girl who was struggling to project her voice. "Think of the words as music," I heard her say gently. "Let them dance." The girl giggled, tried again, and this time her voice carried clear to the back wall. Margaret's smile was genuine. It was a small moment, but it felt like the start of something. Daniel had shown up twice to help with set construction, and Serena was coaching a group of kids on choreography. Watching them work, I realized the conditions I'd set weren't just about protecting my pride. They were about building a community that healed the same wounds I'd once carried. Later that night, after the theater had emptied and the house lights dimmed to a soft glow, I walked down the aisle alone. My heels clicked against the wooden floor as I stepped onto the stage. From here, the seats looked like a sea of possibilities. I pulled the silver star charm from my wrist and held it up in the warm stage light. My grandmother's words came back to me as clearly as if she were standing beside me. For when you're ready to shine. Back then, I thought shining meant applause. Now I knew better. Shining meant building something that outlived the doubts, something that gave others a place to be seen. I fastened the bracelet back on and let my gaze sweep over the empty house. This stage had been my dream once. Now it was my gift to others. A soft breeze from the open side door stirred the velvet curtain, and I smiled, feeling the weight of every step it took to get here. Every no that became fuel, every door that slammed until I built my own. In the end, I didn't just step into the spotlight. I became the one who decided when it would shine, and on whom. Final line. Voiceover punch. They said I'd never be on stage. Now I own the theater.